This makes me wonder, how do you pick these problems? It sounds to me a lot like solving breakage, like looking for something that's just painful, horrendously broken as the business model, like we solve your breakage in an existing company. But how do you pick those? Like, how do you know that you are doing that?
Well, these days I have a criteria. If I'm going to take on a software development project, I have to see an opportunity for a broader market product there. As I say, building good, reliable, commercial grade software is hard. And frankly, if you're the only guy who's ever going to use it, I probably can't afford to charge you enough for that to be economically feasible. And frankly, you need me to solve this problem for your peers and competitors too, because if you're the only guy I ever solve it for, it's probably not going to be a very good product.
You mentioned two really interesting things in there. One of them, when you're talking about, finding the right pricing, and you talked about this early PLG, that really reminds me of how, in the marketer point of view of the world, this is the offer. The offer is really everything. And if you can structure that in a way that's very easy to say yes to, it usually works out. And the other thing that hit me was you mentioned these are very large accounts that you're signing early on. And, any B2B SaaS business would be very happy to have those. How did you go about getting those earlier, larger enterprise customers? Kevin, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here. So you have built Acucode from, basically a basement startup, from an incubator into a company that's on the Inc. 5000 list. And I'm so excited to dive into your journey and just explore everything you built with Acucode. So can you take us back to 1995 and what made you start it in the first place?
Sure. So founded the company in the summer of 95. I based my house. I was working as a salesperson in what was the early stages of the barcode industry back then. And I quit my job on Friday afternoon and I started this on Monday. And I had my first order that morning by 10:30. And it was one of my existing customers of my prior employer. And I had a non-compete with that employer. And I pointed out the holes in their contract and their own dishonesty in the hiring process and got myself, released from that non-compete and immediately went into business for myself. I was 26 years old. I was grossly unqualified to do what I ultimately did. As lots of famous people throughout history say, I do things I'm not supposed to do or be qualified to do all the time. That's how I learned to do them.
Yeah.
And it's the same. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, you're better off starting your entrepreneurial journey in life because when you're young and full of yourself and don't know any better is the best time to do it. That, we started out doing barcode scanners and industrial mobile computers and wireless networks back when they were all brand new, when you had to have an FCC license to put up a wireless network.
Oh, man.
We covered Angel Fire Ski Resort with 2 radios in 1996, and we could turn the wattage up to whatever we wanted, but we were only passing 28 characters back and forth to validate a lift ticket. And we were running a BT terminal Unix session running on a DOS handheld at the ski lift to validate those lift tickets. And we've done every version of those technologies that has come down the road since then. We've evolved into a multidiscipline company. We started our first software as a service business unit back in 2003. Frontier Airlines paid us to build a custom project for them for their mail business. They were moving mail for U.S. Postal, and Postal Service put out a new set of standards requiring new EDI transmissions and engagement from all the airlines that were moving mail around the world for them. That custom product that Frontier paid us $60,000 to build the first version of ended up becoming a product called Velocity Mail. That ended up being the most successful software as a service division. Launched that in 2003.
And that was targeted at logistics, tracking mail, or?
We were doing basically business process automation for air cargo carriers that were moving mail for the postal industry. And this U.S. Postal Service standard became a global standard. And ultimately, we ended up supporting over 60 airlines globally and over 60 countries globally that we were messaging with. And when we sold that business to a publicly traded Canadian company, it sold for $25.5 million. And we had about 60 airline customers as clients at that point. We had about 90% market share for global air. If you were moving mail around the world on airplanes, there was a 9 out of 10 chance that it was flowing through our software to facilitate it. We charged by the kilo for the mail that the carriers were carrying.
That's
Allowed us to
great.
scale
That's early
from
PLG.
Yep. From the biggest, and that's one of the lessons for your audience, one of the lessons I will say is finding the right metric-based pricing model and be all the difference between broad, rapid adoption and slow death. If you're overpriced, if it's difficult to see your value or how I'm going to get my return on the investment, then it makes sales a lot harder.
Mm.
United Airlines was not one of our first clients. It took them several years to finally move off of. They'd had a team internally that had been developing postal systems for over 30 years. They were spending over $5 million a year and failing to meet the industry standards and expectations. And their first year with us, they spent less than $500,000 having us solve that whole problem on an as-a-service basis. And
Yeah.
their
This is
CIO
a
and their
common story for big enterprise teams. They
oh
have the
yeah,
capacity to solve anything, but it's very difficult for them to move.
it still took them almost 2 years to decommission and lay off that development team. They kept spending that $5 million even though they weren't using it anymore.
Yeah.
And the director of postal operations literally called me up and said, if we'd have understood how good your system was and how quickly we could port over to it, because that was one of their biggest challenges. They had such a hard time trying to adopt other software into this problem set that they just didn't want to switch. Like it was like pulling teeth to convince them
Yeah.
that it was going. And then once they finally did it, we literally ported their whole network globally in 6 weeks from the time they signed the contract to fully launched, and everybody was trained and using the system
Yeah.
was 6 weeks. And he called me up and said, if we'd understood, we would have done this years ago if we had really understood how quickly and effectively this could be done. And it all has, we built a multi-tenant environment where we owned all the hosting. Everybody's sharing the same system in real time. They just have their view of their data. And if they
Right.
shared a relationship to a container of mail, it means that they could share their view with their trading partners so that everybody had end-to-end view of the whole process. And that just, before that, everybody had their own system and nobody was
Yeah. Trying to
ability
trade data across companies.
to sync up, and it just didn't work. And
Yeah.
they were always out of date and always inaccurate.
You mentioned two really interesting things in there. One of them, when you're talking about, find the right pricing, and you talked about this early PLG, that really reminds me of how, in the marketer point of view of the world, this is the offer. The offer is really everything. And if you can structure that in a way that's very easy to say yes to, it usually works out. And the other thing that hit me was you mentioned these are very large accounts that you're signing early on. And, any B2B SaaS business would be very happy to have those. How did you go about getting those earlier, larger enterprise customers?
It's all about picking the right problem, Sarah. As I say, most businesses, and it doesn't matter how big or how small they are, they've got somewhere between 3 and 5 major issues right now that are the only things they're interested in spending money on. They're the issues that are burning a hole in their opportunities. It's either market opportunity or cost reduction, but they've got 3 to 5 things that if what you're selling doesn't have an obvious value to one of those 3 to 5 things, I don't care what you're selling, go away. If you can't explain to me in 5 minutes or less how this is going to help me solve one of these 3 problems, well, I don't have time for you, go away. And what we picked, one, this was a compliance issue. So in the case of like American Airlines, back then, they were doing almost $300 million a year in revenue with the United States Postal Service and other places around the world. Well, $300 million a year in revenue when you're an airline is a lot of money. And if I don't solve this problem, I'm not going to get paid for carrying the mail. And so it becomes a compliance sale. I have to do something. I have to have a tool that solves this problem. And that, that's what I only had one salesperson that worked for that division. She closed all of those 60
It's
airlines.
amazing.
And
Yeah.
from 2003 to 2018, we had the exact same 9 people working for that division and supporting that software and operation. And all 9 of those employees went with the new buyer when the company got sold, and they all still work there today. And
So
it's now been running uninterrupted since 2003. It's all written on J2EE Java. And when the new guys bought it, we'll port it over from our co-location hosting space up to Azure. And now it's running up in the cloud.
Nice. This makes me wonder, how do you pick these problems? It sounds to me a lot like solving breakage, like looking for something that's just painful, horrendously broken as the business model, like we solve your breakage in an existing company. But how do you pick those? Like, how do you know that you are doing that?
Well, these days I have a criteria. If I'm going to take on a software development project, I have to see an opportunity for a broader market product there. As I say, building good, reliable commercial grade software is hard. And frankly, if you're the only guy who's ever going to use it, I probably can't afford to charge you enough for that to be economically feasible. And frankly, you need me to solve this problem for your peers and competitors too, because if you're the only guy I ever solve it for, it's probably not going to be a very good product. And so you need to look for ecosystem-based problems where there's an opportunity to go solve the same problem the same way for everybody in a really cost-effective manner that makes it just a no-brainer. I mean, when you're spending $5 million a year to service a problem and you're failing, and I show up and say, look, I'll guarantee the outcome of solving that problem for $500,000 a year, boy, that's an easy decision. Especially if I'm saying, if I miss my mark, you don't have to pay me, because that's always been our policy. If I fail to deliver on what we've committed to, then it's my problem, not yours. And that's part of what's made my company different the whole 30 years. I'm looking for those opportunities. First off, I didn't pick that problem. My customer came to me and said, I have a problem. We had just finished writing the specs for a baggage system for Frontier Airlines, and they shifted their budget from solving that problem to solving
It's a new one.
Mail had revenue associated to it and baggage doesn't. And they decided, they literally came to us overnight and said, stop what you're doing on the baggage project. We need you to go focus on this other problem. And I immediately saw an opportunity to go solve that problem for the whole industry. At the time, we had two really big competitors that had already jumped in that space, IBM and a company called Menlo Logistics, who had a software product in this space. And they both looked on paper like they were way more qualified to solve the problem, but their software ultimately sucked and was terrible. And it wasn't multi-tenant. It was all running on Microsoft code base. It wouldn't scale. They couldn't patch it and update it fast enough because they weren't hosting it. It was running on premise at the airlines. And it didn't work. We were pushing out 4 or 5 updates a month on that software, and the customers couldn't keep up with the updates. And if you're one update behind, it means you're not getting paid on tomorrow's mail.
Yeah.
And so it became a compliance sale. They pointed the market out to us. They pointed out the problem. We just aggressively, we attacked it with the right choices architecturally and business model wise, and made an easy decision. And frankly, that's the most success I've had in the software space so far. The current product we've got is a dramatically more impressive piece of intellectual property.
Are you talking about For Work right now?
I am talking about For Work. For Work runs my whole company today and has allowed us to go scale field services and operational execution in a way that none of our competitors can.
Can you give me a highlight about what differentiates it from, like, say, a ERP that, generically?
Well, I'm of the opinion that ERPs all start with a fundamental flaw, which is they all start with the premise that the reason we're here is to facilitate accounting processors. And I'm sorry, that's not true for anybody but accountants.
Yeah.
And ERP systems are notoriously lacking when it comes to facilitating and creating accurate real-time visibility of my actual operational process.
When I worked at a larger publicly traded company, you'd always have to go and, like, see if it was real. You'd have to go call the guy and make sure. You'd pull the reports from the ERP, and then it was terrible. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Oracle and SAP and all of those accounting system ERP products are what I refer to as autopsy tools. I can tell you 2 weeks or 2 months after they died, why they died and how, but I can't do a damn thing about it today, and I have no ability to impact operational outcomes today. Well, we flipped the script and went the other direction. For Work is all about taking every step of every process and turning it into simple 8th grade reading level instruction sets so that almost anybody can put into that process and can start doing high volume work immediately. And I
Hmm.
get much more consistent results and outcomes that way. And I can now tell you down to the penny by serial number how much it cost me to do every unit, not just give you an estimate for that part number.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm creating real-time visibility of every project, of every task, of every outcome. I'm taking pictures of everything I do every time
Mhm.
I test something. My field services team, my call center team are all being driven and coordinated by the exact same piece of software so that
Yeah.
everybody knows what needs to be done next and how it turned out and why. And our customers literally
Yeah.
have real-time pictures of the work and how it turned
Yeah.
out. Is any issues, they know within minutes.
It's
And
amazing. That's amazing.
don't
That
get
sounds
me
like a lean production team's like dream to be able to have that kind of visibility into what's happening.
we've really struggled to sell full work as a software as a service product.
Yeah.
It's a little intimidating in scope and scale for a lot of organizations. I've literally offered it to almost every major competitor I have in my own industry, and not one of them has taken me up on it, despite the fact that it means I can do things they can't and that, frankly, they all need to do really bad. But
So
their
how are
ego
you
literally,
finding
egos won't allow them to engage with us like that because they see us as a competitor.
Yeah. 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 And how are you finding customers for work then? Like what's your standard sales
I'm not selling for work. I'm selling services and labor through for work. The way basically I'm using for work to help me secure customer relationships, build trust, and drive revenue. And that's what pays for work. We believe that in the next couple of years, we're going to launch a very large scale gig economy business model where for work is
Uh-huh.
basically creating entrepreneurial opportunities for 1099 contractors that are willing to get trained and become certified of how to go do these tasks. I'll be able to give you subcontract work to go install security cameras and network equipment and
Yeah.
robotics, RFID, and visual cognition and physical security and access control, and all of these distributed device populations that require really specific on-site installation, service, and support. I can now go scale that and drive new opportunities for those contractors that frankly they couldn't participate in without a piece of
Yeah.
software.
So that means like a contracting company who's selling these kind of specific things, like maybe security. If they get a big, if they get a big contract, they wouldn't necessarily have to hire or try to figure this out. They could use your platform, and that's going to like bring in gig service field reps, I guess. And then, so how do you handle the? I'm just curious now, like how do you handle the quality issues that might come up?
Well, we have standards on the intake process for the 1099 contractors, obviously. A lot of them are coming through intermediaries that they're supposed to have a profile that tells us what their qualifications and skill sets are. Often we find that the guy who shows up to do the work is not the guy that interviewed or
Yeah.
provided resume.
Yeah.
That's an automatic, you're getting sent home and not being paid today. We have very strict terms and conditions that says, hey, if you're not the guy you said you were, if you don't have the equipment, if you don't follow our instructions, you will be terminated, you will not be paid, and you will be sent home. Don't waste my time. And it happened. Doing 10,000 sites a year, there's going to be a
Yeah.
couple hundred sites where there's going to be an issue where the tech showed up drunk or he showed up without the lift or the ladder or the drill, something, and
Yeah.
he didn't follow instructions, and we had to fire him and get somebody else in there. We do our best not to allow that to impact the customer's budget and schedule. But what for work means that even when that happens, the customer knows it immediately. There's complete real time transparency.
Yeah. That's
And
amazing.
there's nothing that builds trust with the customer like owning your mistakes
Mhm.
and being able to say, hey, we screwed up today. Here's what happened. It's site 1, 2, 3 and why. Here's the pictures of the damage. Here's what we're going to pay to cost, to fix it and what we're going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
Everybody mistakes, but not everybody takes responsibility for it and
Yeah.
cleans up. So,
Yeah, not a no apology.
right.
So how are you? So okay, so I understand this model. I'm wondering, like, how are you finding those people who would be potential customers of that model?
frankly, scaling sales and marketing, which is ironic. My degree and educational background is in marketing and advertising.
Okay.
And the hardest part of what I've done over the last 30 years is scaling my own sales organization. I'm $100 million a year business with less than a 10-person sales team. And we're incredibly efficient and effective at what we do. And I've got just a handful of people that do all of our real selling. Most of our net new customers come from partners, business partners, or from referrals of existing customers. Frankly, my best source of new business is when my existing customers get a new job. When
Yeah.
employees at my
Those
existing
are the best
account,
sales.
yep, they
Yeah.
leave their current employer, they go get a job somewhere else, and they call us literally the first day on the job and say, "Hey, I got a mess. I need your help. Come clean it up for me." And we're always glad to help, and we roll our sleeves up and go get in it. And we are technologists at Acucode. Part of what we do, I don't care what the problem is, and I don't care what the technology is we're going to use to address it. The objective is always the same. I need to create accurate, real-time visibility of all your operational processes, because if I can't see it, I can't drive consistent behavior and outcomes. And that's what automated data collection is all about. That's what business
Yeah.
process automation software is all about. And if you're not doing it that way, if you're relying on tribal knowledge and expert resources, as I say, if you need qualified people to show up every day and work hard and care about their job and how it turns out for their employer, well, that sucks, because you cannot scale that at
It is
all.
hard to scale that. Yes.
You can't scale that. It's not
Yeah.
sustainable. You can't get
Yeah.
enough people because they don't exist.
Yeah.
And
I'm
I
laughing
have
because
to
I'm a SOP making machine right now. So,
yeah, exactly. And that's, we learn because we now, we're having the right processes for every project. And
yeah.
it doesn't matter, even if you're deploying the exact same product or technology to 5 companies, you've got 5 very different projects,
Yeah.
because the facilities are different, their budgets are different, the things that are going with it are different, the people you're dealing with are different, their schedules and priorities are different. They're all custom, as I say, they're all a work of art. And
Yeah.
it's really difficult to scale artwork unless you've got a process and a tool for that.
Yeah.
And it's effectively
Yes.
what we did was build a tool that allowed us to create those processes so that we could scale artwork, and that we can take. Now, I only need one qualified engineer on staff to help me write that SOP process and get it set up into the software. And now I can put as many bodies behind that process as I need to today. We actually had a situation in 2020 during COVID at a facility in Louisville, Kentucky. We went from running 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, to running 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And we did it on 4 weeks notice.
3
We shipped,
shifts. That's 3 shifts. Yeah.
yeah, we went
Yeah.
to running 24 hours a day. Actually, it wasn't 7 days a week. We took Sundays off. It was 6 days a week. And the entire staff, so we tripled our staff in 4 weeks in that same facility by adding 2 additional shifts and an extra work day of the week. And it was all because Kroger asked us to go scale up deployment of technology to help them scale their new home grocery delivery business model,
Oh,
and
yeah.
to
Yeah.
automate their stuff in the stores.
How long did you say it took you to scale up to 3 shifts from
4 weeks.
4 weeks? Yeah. So in another
From,
life, I had
from the phone
too.
call saying, "I need you to do this," to us
Yeah.
going to a 24-hour a day schedule happened in 4 weeks. And all the staff
Yeah.
came from an employment agency in
That's
Louisville, Kentucky.
incredible.
And almost none of them
Yeah.
had any prior technical experience at all. We shipped out over the next 2 months, we shipped out over 160,000 custom configured mobile devices, and not one mistake made it out the door.
Amazing. Amazing.
We
That is it.
literally were turning over 35% of the staff per week.
Yeah.
The turnover rate was 35% a week, and we never missed a shipment, and with no
Yeah.
mistakes made to get out of the warehouse, because your job is to configure, and the next guy's job is to check your work and make sure you did it right. And I have pictures of everything that was done by everybody. And that level of visibility and scripted operational processes allows us to go scale and drive consistent outcomes, higher quality, and use a much less expensive labor force. If I'd had to have qualified people in every step of that process, that project would have taken 2 years, not 2 months.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it. Well, before we wrap up, what advice was like the number one advice that you would give to other tech founders or SaaS CEOs that are struggling to scale right now?
Number one, consider channels. There's people out there like me in both the IT industry and in the telecom sector that already have a trusted advisor relationship with every customer you're trying to sell to. And there's a pretty good chance that if you're not working with them, they are your competitor in those very same accounts because they're selling things that are part of your architecture and process, and they don't want you in there. So one, think about what your path to market looks like and who you could be selling to and through, because they might help you be able to scale that business faster. Second, get your pricing model right. You got it like charging $0.015 a kilo to automate all the processes between the mail carrier and the postal industry. From the littlest guy to the biggest guy, it just automatically scales up. But we had guys that were spending $4,000 or $5,000 a month, and we had guys that were spending $100,000 a month, and on the same price schedule.
Yeah.
It just, if you get the pricing model done right, it makes it super easy for the customer to say, yes, I want that. And it removes barriers to broader adoption in the organization. I see all the time, because the pricing model is too high, like on Salesforce.
It is too high at Salesforce, as I've bought
It's too
Salesforce
high.
before.
It's literally 3 times what it should be. It's
Yeah.
outpriced its value. As a result, almost every customer is super stingy about who gets a Salesforce seat, because I'm
Yeah.
not spending a few $100s a month for everybody on Salesforce unless I really need it.
Yep.
Well, instead, I only give that to my salespeople. Everybody else has got some other system that facilitates their job, and I'm focused on minimizing my Salesforce spend. If you just fix your pricing model, you'll end up increasing revenue dramatically and get so much deeper embedded into your customer base. And then the last thing I'll say about how to succeed in this issue, you got to pick the right tool sets and architectures to build your software. If you don't have an N-tier scalable stack that you can scale to infinity with little to no danger of ever experiencing downtime, well, let me say it differently. If you're still developing your software on a Microsoft stack, I question your qualifications to be in the software as a service business, because Microsoft doesn't make web architected software. They never have. And there's already open source tools out there that have solved all of those problems in dramatically more efficient and cost-effective ways, and you should go check those out. All of our commercial software as a service products have been built on complete open source stacks since the J2E, Java, Red Hat, Apache, and MySQL. That was the core of our stack. We're not running on MySQL anymore since Sun bought it. He moved to one of the knockoffs of that. But we've basically been running, my code library goes back 25 years. I'm still got objects and a library of code that we can reuse anytime we need to, because it's all J2EE Java, and all I got to do is go patch it and update it and roll it.
I think that is a great advice. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thanks, Jean-Michel, and great to meet you. I wish all you and your customers lots of good fortune in the market. And
Thank you.
I'm open to engage with any other software as a service companies as a channel partner, as a mentor, or just as somebody that can give you some advice.
And so if someone's watching this episode, where should they get a hold of you? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Reach out to me through LinkedIn. I'm on there every day, and I respond. If you're not just trying to sell me something, I will respond.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Kevin.